Hi, my name is Olmo Maldonado, and I'm here to talk about OpenAPI driven development. I'm a senior engineer at Zapier, and I've been there 5+ years, and we make automation work for everyone. We connect over 5,000 plus of your favorite ZaaS apps online together, and without any code, you can actually build really complicated workflows that you find important. Um, as you can imagine, this is quite complicated, and we need to wrangle all of this to make more sense. Now, to add to that, Zapier used to be a single monolithic Python stack with Django, and now we're multi-services. We have multiple that are TypeScript, Python, Go, and so on. And we have over 20 teams now across multiple time zones and multiple subgroups within the company. We're practicing better service ownership. And so the coordination between teams, ownership of data, moving from the monolith to new services, strangling up APIs, it gets fairly active and very busy. Now, one of the things that we find that is most important for us to be successful is that our APIs need to tell the truth. Um, the more that they are one to one with the code, we've found has been less incidents, less risk, and less developer upset. Finally, we've noticed that the larger the gap between the design of an API and the implementation, there will be surprises. So the not to be demeaning, but this idea of architects or somebody outside of the team designing an API for the team is not something that we practice. We want the team to be the ones implementing it. And even within the team, it's possible for you to have various documents that have been designed back and forth between multiple teams. But when it comes to actually writing on the code, things change. And finally, the maintenance and upkeep of an API is already very extensive, and we want to reduce that. We want the developers to focus on delivering mission and delivering value to the customer. The more that we can automate the annoying things away, the better. Our solution is not that revolutionary, um, but we want to stress how impactful it has been to depend on the back end to generate its own open API. We use Fast API in some services, and others we use Django Spectacular, but it's the same idea. Don't manually write the open API. Depend on the backend to do that for you, and tweak and learn as you go along. It does create new problems, and I'll try to go over them within the allotted time. But the high level point here is depend on the backend to generate the open API and use the open API everywhere. So I'm going to demo this. Let's start with generating the OpenAPI schema, the docs, as well as the artifacts. I'm going to, along the way, make some improvements to the API, and you can see everything self-update. And I'll show you some of the guardrails that we've been building, and as well as this experimental compatibility that is a hit and miss, but it's good detail to give back to the developers to consider in case that they thought that a benign change would be okay, and it turns out that it wouldn't be as benign. So switching over to the code, what I have here is a simple fast API service. I just have two endpoints. One is a list books, and the other one is a create book. And to run that, I just have a simple make run server command. And I can demo essentially how this works. So get, it gets the books. If I were to create, it would create the book. But this is in memory, so when I restart it, it'll go away. The other thing I can show is the OpenAPI schema. This is delivered with just this endpoint that I added right here. It really just takes the same OpenAPI, but converts the JSON over to YAML and then outputs the results. And then here, if you are interested, you can see that the redoc is available, and there are obviously other OpenAPI documentations out there as well. So there we go. The backend is generating everything. If I wanted to, I have a little command called bin OpenAPI update that essentially calls this code here that just does what I did manually, OpenAPI YAML, and then writes it to a file. And that file is this one. There's no change reported by this because, I haven't done anything to it. But you can see that this is one of the first things that I wanted to share with you is at Zapier, we make the OpenAPI schema part of our repository. So that means on every change that you're making to your backend service, as I'm showing, we will see that change with OpenAPI. There will be some changes on the backend that, like unit testing or improving certain functions inside of the backend, that will never change the OpenAPI. That will never change the API itself, and that's okay. We don't. Uh, we want to have the assurance that if anything would change the interface, we need to see it immediately, and we need to consider the ramifications of the changes. And OpenAPI is kind of a great standard. Just go through it yourself. But I wanted to quickly show schema's book is already defined here, and even schema's author is available here. And this is all generated by the backend. And you can kind of see it actually looks very similar to what the backend is. So again, it's about doing one-to-one with it. Let's see. The next thing I wanted to show is Python models and different artifacts that we can generate. This is not novel. You know that with OpenAPI you can generate anything. So here I've taken OpenAPI and I passed it to another library. That library was going to create this file for me, and you can see it has everything. That command is pretty straightforward. OpenAPI packages update. I suspect nothing will change because I haven't done anything, but you could see that it'll do everything for me. So to actually show something meaningful, let's say that we wanted to add a pages integer to this thing, pages 300. Now, this seems like a benign change because I'm just adding another attribute. You would think it would be additive. Let me just run that update one more time. So what this is going to do is going to update everything. I'm noticing the schema isn't updated, but that's okay. I can manually update that in a second. I'll just cancel this, update, and then first let's look at that. So here you can see already there's the green is the diff. There's now a changes to this where it says the pages is required. So I already know as a developer that this is not good. I've broken backwards compatibility, but let's say that I didn't notice that. What ways will we notice that something got broken? Well, let's update the packages because we should be doing that as well. All of our packages and all of our services are using the version on the service. So this is the service version right here. And we're actually using that directly in our service. And because we're using it directly in our service, our schema actually has that version as well. There we go, version right here. So it's subtle, but I just want to be very clear. Our interfaces have a version. It's calendar versioning. And every single time you publish, you make changes, that version would either stay the same or go on to the next day. You would create another version. And then our APIs themselves have a v1 inside the URL. And again, it's subtle, but for us, the way that we do it is the v1, the URL, is the important one for backwards compatibility. The version in the actual schema is not that interesting. It's mostly used for historical purposes, like taking a look at API doc changes over time or client changes over time and so forth. So this is why we do it that way. All right, the update finished, and you can see that the Pydantic did change, and you can see that the changes now say that it has the pages in there. Like I mentioned, we know that this is actually a backwards incompatible change, but how do I know that? Well, we do have this experimental test called compatibility, And that test will actually check the OpenAPI schema against a previously saved schema that you have online somewhere. I meant on GitHub. And it'll tell you, hey, this is incompatible than what you had before. Um, what this is saying is that you previously had a yeah, this is what I mean by hit and miss. The It's not given enough detail, but it is saying that the return type from the books is not what you had before, and then the return type from the create books is not what you had before. So in both cases, it's trying to illuminate that, hey, there's something wrong with the schema. And my interpretation would be to look at the schema and say, huh, this is now required. Again, this is something of an area that I would like to improve. We're just reusing a library that is available online from the OpenAPI consortium, whatever the open group is. And here I can kind of quickly go over it. There's this OpenAPI tools, OpenAPI diff. It's experimental. The way that we do see the guardrails is we have a GitLab pipeline. You could use whatever you want, but we just have this running all the time. And we're just checking to see if we have something to worry about. It is allow failure true, so it is possible that developers ignore this. It has happened. But at the very least, it's for record keeping that, hey, something tried to warn you. And I think over time, we can make this more consistent and more detailed. And then the other things that we have is checksum inversion. So let's pretend, let's reset all of this. Let's pretend that I wanted to make this update like this, and I didn't run anything. Our CI would eventually test the checksum and the version. So if I run that, it's actually going to look at the version that you're creating, right? It's going to, in the CI, it'll generate the new schema, compare it to an old schema that you have in your repo, and it's going to tell you, hey, wait a minute, you did some backend changes that changed the OpenAPI. I need you to do the bin OpenAPI update. And now the developer is going to be forced to do the update. And now, like, locally, they'll actually see, oh, wow, the change that I did is going to cause this to happen. Is that okay? We're still in the loop. And this is the checksum, by the way. It's just a really simple solution to just keep around state of of how things are. But it's a really simple solution and keeping people in the loop. And that's the whole tighter feedback cycle that we're trying to sell here is you want the OpenAPI to be in the repository. You want it to tell the developer immediately, hey, you're doing something that could be catastrophic. But the solution here, by the way, would be to make this optional. It's not great. I mean, ideally, what you should do is just create another version of the API. But if you make it optional, then at that point, and let's say update the schema, you can actually see that the required is out and this is available. It does happen that clients and other people might be very strict with what you get back from the API. But in this case, as humans, we know that this is okay. This is forward compatible. And then I would actually, one of the earlier things that I would do is change the API, the title, update this. Hopefully by now you're kind of seeing my point. This is very low lift for people to do things like this. And it's nice. It's a really comfortable experience. Most of this updates that I'm doing manually, I can just do make OpenAPI and it'll just do it for me. So if I wanted to change this to V1, save it, you can see it's doing it for me. And now this thing is going to say OpenAPI V1. And then what I would normally do is just cancel this, add everything, send that up to well, in this case, the packages weren't updated, but I can update the packages if I wanted to and so forth. Our CI is going to check all that for you. Have one more. And like I said, all of this is going to be available online. I didn't get a chance to really go through the different options here, tests, packages, and updates. I encourage you to ask questions afterwards, or leave me a comment, and I'll try to get back to you. But that's it. At a high level, what we're trying to do here is using API as a contract and enforcing that contract. We want to avoid editing OpenAPI manually. We want that to be generated. There will be some points where there will be some contention where, hey, your changes that you're making are going to break things. We've noticed that over time, that is less of a occurrence, just because the maturity of your API over time. And you can kind of see this pattern fits well as you go with the number of versionings. So I only showed V1, but for V2, you could do something similar. It could be the same repo or another repo, but nevertheless, the point is reapply the same construct with what you're doing, and you're going to get a lot of the benefits out of it. Yeah. So here's the link, and you can find everything about this. Feel free to reach out if you have any questions. Thanks so much.